Powered by Rev Media in partnership with TSN. This is episode, I want to say 19 or is it 20, Ray? Season 5
You're asking
of the Ray
me?
and Dregs podcast.
Dregs, I can't even get the right start time. You're asking me.
I'm going to call it 20. I don't think I made the adjustment, so I'm going to say it's 20.
Okay. I like
and
it.
If we're
I like
wrong,
it.
Yeah. Presented by our title sponsor, Canadian Club Whiskey. And look, basically every segment I do for insider trading on TSN or obviously the Ray and Dregs podcast, here I am in my home studio, and I often get the question about the Canadian Club 45, which is over my right shoulder. And I've got the 44 over here, as I know you do as well, right? And you're on the road. You're in Carolina, sat here on a Thursday night for Big Tilt there. So the 44 is basically, it's almost consumed. I think that there's maybe one more hearty drink in there. The 45, I don't know what you're like. I haven't opened it yet. And it's like a fine wine. And I guess I'm looking for that special occasion, wherever that special occasion is. Maybe it's Christmas with the family around. I don't know. But I've had that 45-year-old on the shelf for over a year, I think. Close to a year. And I can't bring myself to open it because it's that special. Are you that kind of finicky when it comes to things like this?
No, I'm not, because I look at guys that have these vintage cars and they park them in their garage and they never drive them. They're just there. Mm-hmm. And so, I guess they bring their buddies out and go, hey, look at my cars. And everyone goes, hey, great, nice car. And you might as well just take a picture of it and put it on your wall. What's the point of Dregs? That I'm not at the 45 yet. I got a little more in my 44 than you do, but just keep the box. Consume. It's going to be amazing. You know it is. Yeah. But consume. Share it.
I will. It just feels like you're a grandpa already. I understand that. And you're going to be a grandpa again. It feels like that type of a moment, the 45. The birth of a child, a wedding, something that significant. That's all.
See, you're not wrong, though. You're not wrong.
By the way,
but Ray, I don't think you're going to wait that long. I don't.
Probably not. Geez, let's hope not, because that'll be a while. CC is introducing the first release of the Canadian Club Invitation Series as well. We're looking forward to this. It's the CC 15-year-old Sherry Cask, and it's the signature classic 12-year-old whiskey finished with that secondary aging, which is unique and delicious in the Oloroso Sherry Cask. So all the hallmarks, Ray, of the classic Canadian Club with the added richness and sweetness of sherry. And off the top of the pot, I mentioned that you're in Carolina. And for those who are watching on the YouTube channel, what a backdrop. And I mean, it's glorious. You see the changing of the seasons in North Carolina. It looks beautiful behind you.
Yeah, Dregs, I often tell you, I don't notice things as quickly as I should.
Okay.
Pulled the curtains open this morning, doing my thing. Didn't even notice it. No idea. Sat down with the camera and turned it. I'm like, wow, that looks like a painting. But it's not. But I didn't even notice it when I was looking out. I'm like, oh, it's a parking lot. Didn't even notice it.
Well, the avid followers of the podcast would recall the story that you told where you locked yourself out of your hotel room naked. Sure.
Yeah.
So the fact that you're not paying attention to what's going on outside in North Carolina is probably fair in the world of Ray.
Yeah, it's not a rare event. That's for sure.
All right. Well, Tim Hortons has some tasty beverages, as we know, baked goods on their menu for the holidays right now, Ray. We all need to try the new non-alcoholic Bailey's flavored Tim Hortons classic.
Get that right, mister.
I got to get that right. It's the new non-alcoholic Bailey's flavored Tim Hortons classics, like Bailey's cream coffee. It's delicious. Classic taste of Tim's original blend, infused with a flavor of Bailey's and cream. Who's not going to want that? Wide variety of holiday drinks and your personal favorite, the baked goods, always available only at Tim's. All right, so a tough story this week, right? And it's still a developing story. The saga that is Corey Perry, forced out of the Chicago Blackhawks organization. Placed on waivers for termination of contract. Clears. Contract will be terminated. Now, in fairness, the NHL Players Association does have 60 days to file a grievance and battle back on Corey's behalf. So we'll wait and see if the PA intends on doing that. Kyle Davidson, the general manager, Ray, of the Chicago Blackhawks. I mean, I watched his media availability on Tuesday, and I can appreciate how difficult this whole thing is for Kyle, for the Hawks as an organization. There were a couple of times through his media avail where he had to stop. He had to compose himself. He was that emotional just because of the sensitivity of this entire story. I'll use his word, the disgusting display on social media, right, of how the Bedard family was targeted, and it just took on a life of its own, which we don't need to discuss here. But good on Davidson and the Hawks for acknowledging that the situation around Corey Perry does not involve another Hawks player or his family, but he stopped short after that. He couldn't answer any of the questions, which suggests, given my experience, that obviously there's a lot more coming. So I don't even know, how do we make sense of this from a hockey perspective? Or does hockey even matter in terms of what was expected bringing Corey Perry in and now what you don't have, and all of the negativity that, one more time, swirls around an organization of the Chicago Blackhawks that has had more than its share of earned negativity in the last 15 to 20 years?
Well, I think for a lot of stories that are, that are of similar nature, I'll say, is that there's a certain point where the impact on the sport, the team, the game, becomes the second part of the story. I don't really recall much in the last few days discussion of that.
No,
it's about everything else.
Yeah,
and I assume they're saying what they can.
Yeah.
At this point, whatever that might be, we can all speculate and chit chat. And I mean, I'm in the Toronto airport yesterday. I got 3 guys come up to me in the walk from one gate to the other, saying, asking about it, like I would know something. And if I did, and B, if I did know something, I would tell them. Right. But I don't. I'm like everybody else. I don't know. And so to sit and speculate on it it's kind of, it's irrelevant. It doesn't matter what you think you might have heard from a fourth hand source. It doesn't matter. It's lousy. Whatever it is, it's lousy. And if you're interested in the results or what really happened, eventually, I guess it probably gets out or gets disclosed somewhere.
Yeah.
But in the meantime, there's nobody to ask. There's not from where I stand anyway.
No, and you're bang on. Let's just let it play out. Let's let the Players Association, the National Hockey League, the Blackhawks, everyone involved manage the situation. And if there's more information, and inevitably there will be information that does resurface or surfaces, okay, well then we'll respond at that point. But to even give any credence to the seedy underbelly of social media is a ridiculous injustice. So, all right, well, let's leave it at that. So back on the ice now for a moment. Davidson pivots. Anthony Beauvillier, formerly of the Vancouver Canucks, has been on the trade block for a lengthy period of time, right? Vancouver has the luxury of too many wingers. Connor Garland's name has been out there for a while. Beauvillier, those are the two that, kind of been the focus of trade target. So he quickly makes the move, gives up a 5th round pick, which that's fine. He needed a player. He gets an experienced player in Beauvillier, and the Vancouver Canucks get some cap flexibility. So what is Chicago getting based on what you've seen in Anthony Beauvillier?
Well, he seemed like he was kind of in the wrong place in Vancouver. He was playing on their 4th line. So for a player that needs to produce probably 30 plus points a year, he wasn't going to do it there. I think he's got 2 goals in 21 or 2 games. They were both in that 10-1 win in San Jose. It's like he needed to be in a place in a lineup that they couldn't give him the place. And that does happen across the league where a player is in the wrong spot. Like like in the lineup, there's just not room where he's going to be most effective. And so for Vancouver, they picked him up in the trade, the Horvat trade, which turned into Horvat, and then that first that went for Hronek. So he was part of that whole deal. Vancouver gets $4 million in cap space, prorated for the first 2 months of the year. But Chicago's going to get a guy they're going to play in the middle of their lineup. And for Beauvillier, it's probably a good move. It really is. And for the Canucks, it's a really good move because they'd like to add a defenseman, and they're going to have a couple guys coming back off of LTIR in, I don't know, by Christmas time, I suppose. I think that's where Carson Soucy is supposed to be back. And Pius Suter's got an undetermined timeline so far, but, you're going to need cap space for that too.
Are you still looking at a right shot, for the Vancouver Canucks? I mean, we've connected, the insiders have connected Chris Tanev. I mean, he seems like he'd be a good fit in Vancouver, but, you can go across the board on some of the names that are out there. Sean Walker comes to mind, right? With the Philadelphia Flyers.
He's a good player.
Contract, good player. Some people worry a little bit about the size. He's, 5'11", but he's been effective. He really has been. Labushkin's name's out there. I mean, where do you see the fit?
I think I think Tanev is, is an easy connection because he's been here before, and it's easy to imagine him and Quinn Hughes playing together. That would allow Hronek to drop into a secondary pair, even though Hughes and Hronek have been so great together. I mean,
really good. Yeah.
Who knows if you're able to get Tanev, maybe you play him on another pair, and you don't break up Hughes and Hronek. One thing they've done in Vancouver a lot is they've shuffled their pairs around in game quite a bit. So you end up with the 2 big guys, Hughes and Hronek, out there for 23, 4, 5 minutes a night. But I think Vancouver is, like a couple of other teams, they'd like to add a defenseman for sure.
Sure.
I think they would. And, given what Calgary has and has said, they seem to be the most obvious target for not just Vancouver, but for Toronto and for some other teams as well.
Yeah. I mean, the Leafs are definitely in that mix, and now they've lost Mark Giordano for an extended period of time, I believe with a broken thumb. News on John Klingberg likely going to surface in the next couple of days. He's seeing a specialist in New York, and if he needs surgery, then he's done for the year, which, clearly Brad Treliving is going to try and add something, but puts you in a real tight spot, right? You're basically a quarter into the regular season, and you gotta, hey, Craig Conroy doesn't have a gun to his head. He doesn't have to trade those guys just yet if he doesn't love the market, or, Patrick Galvin or Brad Treliving, aren't in a position where they want or need to overpay. So we'll see. It's getting pretty thin in Toronto right now.
Yeah, but here's the thing. So Conroy's sitting there at the head of the table.
Yeah.
And he knows he's got at least these 2 teams that we just talk about now, Calgary or Toronto and Vancouver, looking at his defensemen. And so he's in an enviable position. Craig Conroy is. He's got the assets.
Yeah.
He can, in his own mind, say, yeah, you're offering this, but they're offering that.
Right.
And then he can take the second offer and go back to the first offer. You got to be careful if you're Alvin or Treliving that you don't end up paying wildly because of the timing of this. And maybe you wait a little bit to see if another player springs loose in a place you don't think of right now. Like that easily could happen too.
Yeah. Well, here's a little tidbit for you. I heard this earlier this week. I may talk about it later on Insider Trading, but Noah Hanifin in connection to the New York Islanders. That would be such a Lou Lamoriello move, right? Because And not only do you make that trade, however you make that trade, and I'm not suggesting there's a deal imminent. I just know that the Islanders are one of the teams connected to Calgary on Noah Hanifin. But you trade for him and then you extend him immediately, right? That's it's Pat Brisson working at his finest, which is what he did with Dubois and sending him to the LA Kings. And oh, by the way, here's the extension that comes with the player. So, I'd be curious to see what the Islanders would have to give up for Noah Hanifin if he ends up being the right
I'm doing
fit
the
there.
Islander game today.
Yeah.
They in Carolina, they just picked up Mike Riley on waivers.
Mm-hmm.
They got Simon Bolduc. Pulak's a good player. They've got Grant Hutton up. Like, they're patching a defense together. Adam Pellick's out for a long period of time. They miss him a lot.
Yeah.
And so, Hanifin's from the East. He's from Boston.
Makes some sense, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
All right, let's revisit the Maple Leafs and the Florida Panthers on Tuesday night. I mean, for a low-scoring game where Austin Matthews didn't do much, Mitch Marner takes a puck in the face, comes back with a cage. I mean, the big boys for Toronto were just okay. Toronto's compete level got better as the game went on. We saw some things in this game, though. Sheldon Keefe absolutely loses his mind on the bench and goes after Tyler Bertuzzi specifically after Noah Gregor scores the tying goal. But what I want to touch on was the shootout. Have you ever seen what we saw? So Evan Rodriguez thinks he's got the shootout winner for the Florida Panthers. Joe Woll is gone. He's in the Leafs room already. Game over, puck's in the net. Florida wins, gets the extra point.
Right.
Obviously, whether it's the Situation Room or the Toronto video people, they quickly pick up on the fact that there was the double tap. So Rodriguez takes the shot. It goes off Woll's pad, like what, quarter of an inch maybe, and then rebounds off Rodriguez's stick and crosses the goal line. So they call the play back on the double tap. Have you ever seen that? I haven't seen that before.
No, I've seen somebody quickly shoot a rebound.
Yeah.
But the two main participants, Woll and Rodriguez, they had no idea.
None.
And so, and it looked it didn't even look strange, really. Sometimes things look strange, and you go, "Oh, I need another look at that." But when they came back with the replay, you're like, "Oh yeah, that's like right away." It was so obvious when you saw it.
Yeah.
Right, but in live time, like as I said, neither of those guys had any idea. Because if Woll thought there was even a chance, he would have just stayed in the net.
Yeah.
Noah Gregor said he was in the locker room and Morgan Riley was calling him back, and then he had to shoot. Like, I think it was all, I don't know, it was entertaining as heck, man. Like, and then of course, Paul Maurice makes it more entertaining. Is it good?
So good.
Is it good? Well, screw you.
He was a beauty. There's something about Toronto for a lot of teams, and Maurice, obviously being a former Toronto Maple Leafs coach, maybe that just accentuates or heightens his level of entertainment, if you will, because he's so animated on the bench. He really, truly is. And you're talking about the end of the game where, Toronto scores. That one's good. Okay, middle finger basically to the officials. And then post game, man, he was vintage Mo, talking about their penalty kill, how good it was. They killed off 9.5 minutes in the second period and 4,000 penalty minutes in the third. Oh, I love that guy.
Yeah, he can when he gets rolling, like it's a great thing.
Yeah,
it's a great thing.
Okay, we need a headline. Are you here as the key main star analyst of the Rain Dregs Hockey Podcast to declare that Connor McDavid and the Edmonton Oilers are back?
Well, gee whiz, that's a tough one. What's he got, like 12 points in 3 games or whatever?
Yeah. Go out on a limb, Ray, and say that Connor is back.
So the answer, of course, is yes. But this is a really interesting topic because it's not just McDavid, it's the Oilers. And we talked about this when they were, trudging through the mud of their poor play that ended up costing Jay Woodcroft his job. Right or wrong, it cost him his job. Because there was going to be a point where Connor McDavid played more to what his regular game is, which is better than most everybody else's. There was going to be a time when Stu Skinner was going to be better than a 84% save percentage. There was going to be a time when their power play was going to get going again. Like it was going to be. So we hear all the time about, somebody's going to regress to the mean. How about somebody climb out of the hole to the mean, to the average? Yeah. That was going to happen. And so all this, fire everybody, trade everybody, get rid of all these guys. A, you can't do it because you just can't. There's no way to do it. And B, some of it is as difficult as it is. You got to wait. You have to wait. Unless you think that somewhere between the end of last year and November the 15th that Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl forgot how to play hockey. Unless you think that was the case, part of it was they just had to wait and hope to hell that their best guys started to play. And that's right. Look at what's happened now. It's, Kane has 7 goals in 8 games. McDavid's on this incredible run. Draisaitl really hasn't gotten red hot yet, and he's going to. Like, that's going to happen. Nurse has started to play more in the way that he has to play. Evan Bouchard's kind of settled the freaking all over the place that he was playing, and Skinner's starting to play like an NHL goalie again. Yeah. So the results are pretty obvious to see.
Yeah, kind of a simple recipe, right? When everybody, you always say this, right? When you identify individually what your job is, what your role is, and that's what you focus on, then when you're a good team, and Edmonton's a good team, the sum of the parts eventually does come together, and guess what happens, right? You start winning some games.
The toughest part is as we see, is to ignore or not get pulled into the slop. Right. Because it always happens. Few guys struggle, few more guys struggle, then somebody tries to help to do more, they start to struggle, and pretty soon you can't beat anybody.
Let's wrap up headlines with just a look at some of the best teams that maybe aren't playing great. And we just talked about Edmonton on the rebound here. You've got the New York Rangers who, as we're having this conversation on Thursday, are leading the National Hockey League right now.
That was a hell of a game last night.
Wasn't that a game last night?
Oh, great game.
Maybe they're not getting enough love, and right or wrong, it doesn't seem like they are, because not so quietly. I mean, you're 21 games in, you're past the quarter mark. We know what we're seeing now in the New York Rangers. This is a legit contending team.
I am really impressed, and I wonder, like, if you can go or look past and say maybe this is the way they're going to play the rest of the way. Last year felt off for them. 2 years ago felt like a lightning bolt. But this year they've done it. I think Jonathan Quick's got 6 wins in goal. Yeah. Who thought he had any game left? I didn't. I'm so impressed. Like, he just refuses to quit. Mm-hmm. Their defense is really good. Their top 5 in particular is really good. And excuse me, Gustafson's been a nice add for them. Yeah. Up front, Panarin's been unbelievable.
He has.
Lafreniere is kind of slowly getting there, right? Like, Zibanejad, they've done a lot of this without a great Zibanejad. I think he's an unreal player. So it's not like they've been hitting it out of the park on all cylinders.
No.
They're a good team. They really are.
Yeah. Boston and the Vegas Golden Knights. I think that the Vegas Golden Knights is defending champions, and we'll wrap with this. I think they they do things the right way within that organization. And maybe that's the experience of George McPhee, and give Kelly McCrimmon some credit. And obviously the coaching of Bruce Cassidy and what he's brought to the equation there. But I know that they had lots of conversations coming into this season, right? Conditioning themselves mentally for what they were going to face. You know, as the defending champions, that you're not going wire to wire. Like, there are going to be tough games. There are going to be, slumps where for 5-10 games maybe you're not playing the way you need to play, but you have to persevere, and you've got to get through it and then worry about the only thing that matters, the playoffs, right? And then the marathon and the grind that is. So was it predictable for you that Vegas would kind of find its way back in the pack, and maybe the Boston Bruins too, given everything that the Bruins have been through in the last several months?
Well, I'll start with Boston. That I just thought it was incredible. They were 14-1-3. I'm like, how are they doing it? A little bit of smoke and mirrors and just amazing goaltending. So for them to come back, I'm not surprised. I think they're not a team that's going to give up 17 goals in 3 games very often, but they're not a team that's going to win 14 out of 15 games either. They're in the middle of that, right? They're a good team. They'll be a playoff team. They're better, I think, than I thought they were going to be early. We'll see where their level is. Vegas is just so good. I saw this phrase. It's about Carolina. And this phrase, I think, applies to Vegas as well. So Carolina's they're 13-8. They got 26 points. Doesn't it feel like they're playing lousy?
Yeah.
Right? So the phrase is they're in a motivational dead zone. And I'm like, it's so perfect because Carolina's a great team, a really great team. They're going to be in the playoffs.
Mm-hmm. No question.
Vegas is the same thing. Of course, they're the Stanley Cup champions. But at a certain point, you just can't get your game to where it needs to be. Because as much as you tell yourself, hey, we got to be better, it's just not. You're not as desperate or as motivationally sharp as you need to be. Yeah. And I think probably Vegas is in that. I see they lost Shea Theodore for a while. He's a big part of their team, and there's going to be some ups and downs, man. The year is just too bloody long for there not to be.
No, fair enough. Those are your headlines. Thank you to Tim Hortons.
Tim's new non-alcoholic Baileys-flavored holiday menu. Enjoy the classic taste of the holidays anytime with a creamy Baileys-flavored latte. Celebrate the season with the taste of the holidays with Tim's new non-alcoholic Baileys-flavored holiday menu.
A reminder, our interviews on Ray and Dregs are brought to us by Canadian Club Whiskey, who have introduced the first release of the Canadian Club Invitation Series, all the hallmarks of classic Canadian Club with the added richness and sweetness of sherry. Couple of questions. Ask Ray and Dregs anything.
Yeah.
And a reminder, you can send us your questions on Twitter and Instagram at Ray and Dregs, or on the website, rayanddregs.com. Mark Simon offers a bit of a confusing one here for us, Ray. So I'm going to do my best to try and make the point I think that Mark is trying to make. It's about the double IHF and international play, and Mark has an idea. He references the men's world championship in May, right? We've been to it many times. Huge for the European countries. That goes without saying. His idea is this: why doesn't the NHL work within a framework to create a B on B tournament? So he would have you push to have a D1 Worlds in September to allow it to fit before the NHL season starts. I don't think you'd get the NHL or the PA to go along with that, primarily because there's enough stress on the players, be it a B player or the best on best player. There's enough stress on these guys. Would you agree? I mean, look, the double IHF meetings are happening right now in Zurich, and they're talking about all the issues that are still preventing all sides from signing off on the Olympics, right? There's no official international calendar in place. It's expected there'll be one. It's expected you'll have I'll call it the World Cup of Hockey in 25. It's not likely going to be called the World Cup of Hockey. Anyway, my point is, I like the idea of more international play, more players involved. Logistically, do you see it happening beyond what we already know?
No, because I think one thing that gets overlooked is the IIHF has to put on these tournaments, right?
Yeah.
The infrastructure, it just is not there to keep adding events.
No.
Because they have to put on Division III World Championships and, up and down the ladder of both men's and women's events that they're responsible for. To add another one, just from the IIHF side, I just don't think the infrastructure is there to add any more.
No. I've talked about this before, and I think you like the idea. The U18 men's. So the National Hockey League and USA Hockey have actually partnered, right? So the U18 men's is, I think it's going to happen in April. Maybe not this year, next year. They haven't identified the site yet. Obviously, it'll be in the U.S. But that creates more of a spectacle. I mean, you're not talking about NHL players here. You're talking about draft eligible players. So, again, it adds a little bit of flavor to that international scene. But it's always a delicate one because of all the parties needed to be involved. Okay, one more here. Dryden Mortimer. Interesting name. Named, in fact, after Ken Dryden.
Oh, I like it.
First name, Dryden. That's interesting.
Now, okay, so this guy's nickname's got to be Morty, doesn't it?
We'll find out. Yeah.
It's got to be Morty.
It's got to be Morty. What else would it be?
I don't know. Dry.
So I've got to paraphrase this question, too. It was a long one. But an interesting one, and you'll like it from a TV perspective. Impressed by the reaction. Morty is impressed by the reaction from broadcast trucks or studio productions, and how quickly we're able to support stories or topics on the fly with highlights past or present. So he's wondering how this works. Is there a massive library of footage that's collected and all that? And there is, to a point. But so take us into that world. If you're doing the Hurricanes game tonight, as an example. So, it's not a news flash that Aho or, one of the great Carolina players has been impactful during his time. So your producer would likely have a goals package of Sebastian Aho or something. That's just the pre-production work that he does and that you do in concert with some of the story ideas that you may want to touch on over the course of that game.
Right. So also they played once this year and the Islanders had a 3-0 lead. Carolina won 4-3. We will have a highlight pack of that game that we could drop in if something similar impacts, right? Mm-hmm. Like if, say, the Islanders get a lead and Carolina comes back, we can say, earlier in the year this happened.
Yeah.
So in the truck, they have, I don't know, probably 15 or 20 stories that are packaged together. Mm-hmm. Like a lot of things, studio's easier because you guys are, it's all nice and comfy and cozy and all that. Yeah. They have a far bigger library. Like you guys have access in the studio to just about anything, right? Yeah. And if you need it, if something happens in game, you could say to the producer, hey, can we dig this up? And then it's not like it used to be where everything was on tapes.
Yeah.
Now they just have to find it and however it's cataloged and they can pull it up pretty quick.
Yeah. TSN, ESPN for sure, cutting edge when it comes to this stuff, particularly in studio. But when I did games for NBC, they simplified it in studio where I brought the idea back to TSN and they kind of looked at me and said, yeah, whatever, buzz off. But the editor was actually in studio with us. So Keith Jones and Mike Milbury the three of us would sit, watch the game on the big screen, but they could cut their highlight packs and their talking points with the editor while we're watching the game. So as soon as the period ends, boom, click, their video pack is sent off, as opposed to old school where we're sitting watching the game in studio at TSN and we've got Sean Cameron, Puffy there, and he's marking all the talking points, but then has to take it away. And we've never been able to do that. So I don't know. I hope we answered Morty's question, because that was a direct TV production question. That
it's
interesting.
I think it's safe to say what you see on your TV, there's about 8 layers behind it, and it's amazing it all gets to where it needs to get to. Like it really is pretty remarkable.
It is, yeah. All right, buddy, you've got the game tonight, and then heading back to Vancouver.
Back home for the weekend, and then on Tuesday I've got a Canucks game, and I probably should. Oh, you know what? Next Tuesday is going to be fun. So I got Carolina Islanders tonight, fly back home, and Tuesday is the Hughes Bowl in Vancouver.
That's right.
New Jersey and Vancouver playing, and all 3 Hughes boys will be on the ice, which is pretty incredible. That'll be fun.
Oh, it'll be a good one. All right. Well, I'm heading to Seattle for the Board of Governors meeting. So This will be that rare occasion where the next episode of the Ray and Dregs podcast, I'll actually be working on Pacific time. So you, Zuby, Ryan Rashog, you guys are, I'll feel the pain if we have to tape early on.
But all of a sudden you're going to say, what about a little later? How about a little later? Yeah. You'll see.
All right, buddy. Have a good game, and safe travels back to Vancouver.
Same to you. Have a good weekend, everybody. Thanks for listening, and we'll check in again next week.
Thanks to our sponsors who continue to support Ray and Dregs, our title sponsor, Canadian Club Whiskey, and Tim Hortons. And as always, thank you for rating, for listening, for sharing the podcast, and for following us on the Ray and Dregs YouTube channel. Until next time, stay safe, everyone.